As you can see, light is a distant memory in the UK, but it's 9:30 in LA. So putting the LA into DLA, we're joined by Tom Ora, who's one of my colleagues and friends from our Los Angeles practice, and has assembled a great team of international speakers to talk about how production in the film and television sector is coped and is coping with the global pandemic. Tom.
Thank you, Nick. And I would say live from Hollywood, but today we're going to be traveling the world, so I won't limit ourselves. Welcome to our virtual panel on resuming global production in the wake of the pandemic. I hope you've all enjoyed the presentations so far this morning. It's been fascinating and lots of insightful information. I hope we can end on a similar note. My name is Tom Ora, and I am the co-chair of DLA Piper's Entertainment Finance and Transactions practice. My practice focuses exclusively on transactions and financings of all types in the media and entertainment sector, spanning across film, TV, new media, games, esports, and new technologies, with a particular emphasis on cross-border transactions in our industry. DLA Piper truly has the preeminent global media and entertainment practice, and I'm very proud to be a part of this team. 2020 has brought no shortage of surprises and challenges to our world. This year alone, we saw our environment continue to go haywire with wildfires raging down under at the beginning of the year, Brexit, the impeachment of a US president once again, and the unfortunate and tragic loss of a basketball great, and that was just in the first 2 months of 2020. Of course, as we all know, we were hit with the worst pandemic in nearly a century, and the resulting lockdowns that followed globally, followed by social and political unrest around the world as we witnessed police misconduct linked to systematic racial injustices. Then there were more environmental catastrophes as the wildfires raged again, this time in the Western United States. And we rounded the curve of this glorious year where we found ourselves in election season here in the United States, as well as the unfortunate loss of one of the greatest US Supreme Court justices to have ever lived. We've now found ourselves in the United States in the midst of some political uncertainty, and of course, worldwide, we are facing lockdowns again, and we are rounding out this year with further uncertainty. I'm sure I've left out many other monumental events which took place this year in all corners of the world, but I think I've already done enough to cheer everyone on this call up. So let's turn our attention to the topic that is of particular importance to this audience and the panel that is joining us today. How has global film and TV production fared during this time, and how is it pulling itself out of the throes of these crises to come back to work and to produce the thousands of hours of content that we've all enjoyed binging at home on our streaming services of choice? So to make this journey around the world, we're going to take you from Los Angeles to the UK, and then head to Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and finish in Mumbai before we say goodbye to you. On this whirlwind trip around the globe, I'm joined by 4 esteemed industry experts who will give us a glimpse into what is going on in their region, the projects their companies are involved with or are supporting, and how they are getting back to production during the pandemic. Starting from west to east, from Los Angeles, I'm joined by Benjamin Hung, who is Executive Vice President, Head of Business Operations and Finance for MRC Entertainment. Ben oversees all business aspects, including content strategy and greenlighting for the film, television, and nonfiction divisions of MRC. MRC has garnered over 90 Emmy and 12 Academy Award nominations with projects including House of Cards, Stephen King's The Outsider, Ozark, Ted, Baby Driver, and Knives Out, one of my personal favorites. Ben has also had prior stints at Marvel Entertainment and Sony Pictures. In the UK, I am joined by Cassandra Carias, who is Head of Legal and Business Affairs for Film 4. Cassandra works closely with the creative, business, and finance teams across Film 4's very busy production slate. Some of you may know that Film 4 is a pint-sized Oscar's powerhouse, chalking up dozens of Oscar wins and over 100 Oscar nominations in its approximately 40-year history. From the UK, we traverse across Europe to the desert oasis that is the United Arab Emirates, where we're joined by Hans Fraikin, who heads the Abu Dhabi Film Commission. Over the last decade, the UAE has been the epicenter of major film production in the Middle East, and Hans is now responsible for continuing to develop a world-class production center and film-friendly community in Abu Dhabi that is capable of supporting large and small productions from around the globe. Our final stop will be Bollywood and South Asia, where we will speak with Dileep Singh Rathore, a producer and owner of On the Road India. He will tell us about his endeavors during the pandemic in filmmaking throughout India and South Asia, and what the current state of play is in the region. Dileep recently comes off working on Christopher Nolan's Tenet and has a number of other tentpole films under his belt, including The Dark Knight Rises and successful Indian films. Welcome to you all, and thank you for being here today. I'm mindful of the time zones we're all in, so a special thank you for those willing to join us in their pajamas. Before our panelists do the rest of the talking, I do want to make one important plug. As the first signs of life in film and TV production began to take shape a few months into this pandemic, our media and entertainment team here at DLA Piper moved quickly to put together a global guide containing all of our learnings and knowledge during these times. The resulting work product, which I'm very proud of, is DLA Piper's Global Industry Guide to Resuming Production Post-Pandemic, which is a comprehensive report on the key considerations for resuming film and TV production across 20 jurisdictions around the world. We've made this guide available to the production community at no cost, and if you would like a digital copy, please email me or one of our organizers today, and we'll make sure you receive it. We are continuing to update this guide, which is currently on its 3rd edition. So let's kick off our presentation and begin with the state of play in the US and speak with Ben Hung at MRC. Ben, welcome. We have Ben?
Yes. Hey, thanks, Tom.
Oh, there you are. Good. Welcome. So Ben, you at MRC's had a very active roster of film and TV productions over the years, some of which I had mentioned earlier, but like many of the rest of us and those in production, a lot has come to a stop over the past 8 or 9 months, 7 months. So where do things stand with MRC and your production slate, and what are you guys currently doing?
Yeah, so you're right. You know, it's with the pandemic, it's, you know, it's taken a lot of preparation to get back into it, but we started production on a TV show yesterday on Monday. We have another one starting on Wednesday. So the one that started on Monday was in Los Angeles. The one starting on Wednesday is in Atlanta, and we have one starting next week, which is going to be in the UK. So we would have liked to go one show at a time and kind of figure out and see how everything goes. But the way it worked out, we kind of have 3 productions going all at once. And so this will be our first foray into kind of the TV space. Our company, internally, we have, you know, production task force, and MRC also includes Dick Clark Productions and Hollywood Reporter and Billboard. And so internally, we have a production task force, and Dick Clark Productions, you know, has recently come out with the Academy, you know, of Country Music Awards and the Billboard Music Awards. So those productions, albeit a little bit quicker and smaller, have been able, you know, we've been very lucky to see no, you know, nothing happen, no shutdowns or anything, and those are super successful, and for us to also learn from that as well.
So what are some of the considerations that are taken into account and to deciding whether you're going back to production on any of these particular shows, and are some of these legacy projects that were set to start earlier in the year that have now been moved to this point?
Yeah, so I would say that there are 4 considerations as we look at everything, you know, as we went through. 1 is safety protocols, 2 is insurance, 3 is budgets, and 4 is kind of the production and creative schedules or considerations. And so with regards to safety protocols, one of these things was, how do we meet or exceed all the requirements of all the key stakeholders, right? That includes with the talent, with the guilds, with local, federal, and state, requirements, and even with our network partners. And so, for us, we've contracted and worked with a group that's been advising us called CTEH, and they've been able to, we've been able to come to with guidelines and manuals for everything we're doing, which including onset experts from their group, up to 7 folks per production, more shoot days so that we limit the number of hours that we shoot per day, a zoning system where, you have a zone A for your essential on-screen talent, and no visitors and limited interaction with anybody, all the way to like a zone D, ventilation upgrades for stages that we're looking at, more testing. All of our productions are, some of them are 3 to 4 times a week that we test, transportation. So for our key talent, do we look at private jets, with no flight attendants and, and the quarantine isolation periods as they come in, for that. With regards to insurance, we look at and say, right now, it's been we were fortunate because our current production plans or insurance allows us and protects for COVID. But going forward, as we start to evaluate it, it's been more difficult to find any insurance providers right now to provide coverage for COVID, particularly whether it's for production or for profit insurance or anything like that. So that, I think, is going to be a challenge in the future. Right now, with all of our productions, we're in a good spot to be able to do that. Budgets. So with all the safety protocols that I mentioned, there's significant costs, and we feel that it's worth it to protect the show, protect our talent, protect our staff. And a lot of it was figuring out, what portion do we cover? What portion do our network partners, and I think, it's been very amenable in terms of us figuring out, of both sides compromising there. And then the final is, changes to kind of the creative and the production. So how do we limit the exposure and the possibility of a shutdown or anything like that? And that's, less crowd scenes. So where appropriate, we're able to rewrite some scripts to limit the amount of crowds, more stage time. So trying to, have this controlled environment versus going like on location, where you might not necessarily be able to control some of these functions. And then also looking at dual functions for folks, right? So how do we get folks that, if you have a second director or something like that, and he gets COVID or something, do we have someone who can step in as a backup or can serve as a producer and director? And so those are the kind of the key things that we're looking at. And then, to answer your final question, for the most part, I think we haven't had major shifts in terms of our production schedule. There were a couple that may have gone, a few months earlier, but we were very lucky that we were kind of in a period both for film and TV, whether we had either finished and, we're in post in our projects, or we were just starting up. So it didn't affect us as much as some of the other studios.
Great. And I realize you're only on your second day of production on the first project, but what have you seen in terms of either challenges or things you didn't expect were going to be possible that so far, to the extent you've seen, have happened?
Yeah, I think, everyone, that we've seen so far has been very, very diligent, right? The staff is in their mask, the talent is gung-ho about this. I think the key challenge in the future will be, there's a little bit of putting your guard down once you start, right? So you start and everyone's gung-ho, and then as you start and nothing happens and you start getting deeper in the productions, will people remain as diligent in the protocols and the safety and still, social distancing, everything like that, Right. So I think we'll start to get there. And I think having the onset experts on there will help us, continue to keep pushing and making sure that we're adhering to the guidelines that we set up.
One of the things you also mentioned was the shift to moving away from like crowd scenes and public areas to stage work. One of the things we have seen with our clients who have been securing stages for different projects is that our clients will request or demand certain modifications to the facilities to be made to be COVID compliant. and some of the stages have already done that. Are you seeing quite a bit of that happening, and your own requirements that are being imposed? And do you see those being kind of long-lasting changes that will persist long after COVID is gone?
Yeah, we've been seeing a lot of, the stages of them actually retrofitting or upgrading the systems. In fact, the one that we're spending a lot of money on in HVAC system is our production in the UK. So we're seeing a lot of that, and I actually also think that you'll see a lot of that in the future, and that'll be a long-term thing. With everything, we're just being safer and having some of these upgrades and these systems in place. I will say, part of the challenges with some of these things is, we have a production which is primarily more character-based, right, and outdoors, and that's easier to handle. We also have a period piece, which is more elaborate, right, costumes and makeup and hair and stuff. And so those are the ones that get us a little bit more nervous, where you have to take more precautions with makeup artists or laundering the costumes and making sure that, those are, getting cleaned every day or so. So there's definitely the challenges also where you can prevent some things, but you can't avoid everything.
Very interesting, and it's incredible how we've adapted and continue to adapt to these challenges that face our productions. Thank you for that, Ben. Cassandra, we're speaking today as the UK is facing a second major wave of coronavirus cases and another nationwide lockdown. And in the midst of that, how's that impacting the productions your company is working on and what you're seeing?
Well, fingers crossed so far, the immediate lockdown doesn't seem to be changing any of our resumption plans. The lockdown is more a social one rather than a work. We're still permitted to work, so production can still proceed, which is lucky really, because we had, a bit like Ben was saying, they're all coming at once. We've got almost 5 productions, sort of 4 and 1 still to be confirmed, all resuming this month. One resumed in September, which was good, or started in September, and we've got 2 resuming this month that were due to go earlier in March. So certainly here in the UK, it feels like things are manageable for our UK productions. They should be able to proceed as planned. We've got one starting in a couple of weeks in Wales, which is in a very contained location, and it's just a 4-week shoot. So that feels very manageable once we get everybody there and they've observed their pre-filming period of isolation. We feel hopefully the risks there will be manageable once they start. We've got another one in the London area, which is more challenging because there's a lot of exterior shooting and there were a lot of crowd scenes. So we're having to think about how we reorganize that. It's also a Christmas movie, so we were hoping for Christmas decorations on the streets and kind of buzzing London streets. And obviously that whole landscape has now changed with shops with their shutters down and very few shoppers and all wearing masks and so on. That changes the look of that film. And then sort of slightly more internationally, we have Earwig, which was announced yesterday. That started shooting just a couple of days ago in Belgium. Again, that seems to be manageable. That one is a very small cast and there's a lot of work being done in studio space as well. And we have one shooting in the Netherlands, which again seems to be a conducive environment. Testing is there's a really good regime there as opposed to here in the UK, and that's helping. So far so good. We'll see. It does feel a bit daunting having so many starting at once, but one thing we can celebrate is that Mothering Sunday, I think it was announced today, that wrapped successfully. So that was a 7-week shoot. We've all been on tenterhooks for the last 7 weeks. For us, that's been a fairly large budget production, high profile, big cast members and so on. So for that to get through it 7 weeks without incident is, fantastic news. So it's great to take that one off the internal risk report now for shooting periods. And just fingers crossed the next few will get through as well.
So you're the other lawyer on this presentation.
Right.
As the head of legal for a company that is so active with production, what are some of your top priorities in overseeing those teams going back to production, and what are the things you're thinking about and making sure they are thinking about in doing so?
Well, the legal team and our production team have been working very closely together across the protocols and just making sure that the producers really understand what needs to be put in place and making sure they do. From a legal perspective, then my team are making sure most contracts now have a specific COVID addendum attached to the back of them, which set out all the expectations, all the specific obligations, and all the reps and warranties that they will comply with all of those requirements. Most crucial for us is the insurance piece, and a big unlocking for productions to restart was the announcement of the government scheme, the 500 million insurance-backed scheme that was announced in July. Details of that then trickled through very, very slowly, which was quite painful. We got details end of September, by which time Mothering Sunday was already shooting, and then it only got state aid approval in mid-October.
Okay.
And so now applications are starting to go through. So it has been a bit of a nerve-wracking period, not quite knowing what the eligibility criteria are, when we can apply, just not having that definite confirmation that we're all eligible, but it all seems to be good so far.
Can you share a little bit about what you expect to come from that program and how that would help your productions in Film 4?
Sure, and also just crucially, I suppose, on the finance contracts, we've had to, all financiers, and this has been across the board, we've all had to insist on a right to cease funding if, for whatever reason, a production is not eligible for the scheme. And it's a slightly circular issue, because one of the eligibility criteria is that you have to demonstrate to the scheme that the production would not have been able to start or restart if it were not for that scheme. So it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you like. All the financiers have had to make it absolutely clear that their financial commitments are fully dependent on qualifying for that scheme. So yeah, just a little bit on the scheme. It's for all productions that qualify under the UK cultural test, or an official co-production as well will also qualify, but 50% of the production budget has to be spent in the UK. So it will only apply to those films. It provides cover for losses from delays and interruptions of up to 20% of the production budget, or in the case of an abandonment, it's up to 70% of the budget, but the government has to agree that the abandonment was necessary. The entry cost for the scheme is a 1% levy, 1% of your film's budget to enter into the scheme. And then the expected excess on each claim will be 10% of that claim. And there's a total cap per project of £5 million. Like I said, it's a £500 million fund available to projects. There are also time constraints because it's a temporary measure. I think they're hoping that the private insurance sector will step in and offer some kind of pan-re solution in the future. So it's time limited. Originally, we thought that productions had to have started shooting by 31st of December this year, but they have now extended that to the 28th of February next year. And it will cover losses incurred up to the 30th of June 2021, and then claims have to be made by 30th of November 2021. So it is just a temporary measure and a limited fund of 500 million. So we'll see what kind of claims are made on that. But very much needed. I think certainly in the independent sector, productions just would not have been able to get funded. And that's across the television piece as well. I mean, my colleagues in the television space were obviously in a very difficult position where there were certain productions they absolutely had to get back up and running, or big tentpoles like the Great British Bake Off that really needed to be done, but without an insurance solution, it was incredibly challenging. So this really has unlocked production in the sector.
Well, thank you for sharing the details of that. Production stage development in the UK continues to boom as well. And we've read about new facilities being developed in Reading and Bournemouth and other locations. What modifications have you seen in terms of the actual facilities to accommodate COVID and protocols? What have you heard from your production teams, or what are you requiring in terms of when you're going into a facility and using a stage? What are the key things you're looking for to make sure, to ensure the safety of your cast and crew?
The productions that we've managed to get off the ground so far have all been quite contained, sort of low budget features. So I don't think there's been much production stage work. So I can't really comment in detail on that. But on protocols generally, There are, of course, the BFC sort of minimum guidelines, if you like, which were put together by the Screen Sector Task Force, which we were a big part of, which apply across the board to all productions. But what's interesting is that it's becoming apparent they are very much seen as minimum guidelines. And even at Channel 4, to stay consistent with our television content, we're having to apply more stringent requirements, actually, certainly on testing. I think the BFC requirements are for 1 test a week for the key cast and crew. For Channel 4, it's 2 times a week. I think for SAG, it's 3 times a week. And I know for some studios, it's 3 or 4 times. So it's interesting how a scale is already coming out as to what protocols need to be observed. Other than that, things like the pre-filming period are absolutely crucial. So some of our productions, we require a full 14-day absolute quarantine. On other productions, it might be a 7-day pre-filming period of limited social contact and then strict observance of protocols for any essential prep work that needs to be done and any attendance in a production office and so on. So we're seeing quite a bit of variance across productions on what's required. It's a huge amount of work for the team.
Indeed, very very interesting, and thank you for sharing that. Thank you, Cassandra. So Hans, contrary to unpopular belief here in the US, the heat of the summer didn't kill the virus, but you are in a region with warm or extremely warm weather most of the year. What impact has the pandemic had on production in the UAE, Abu Dhabi, and the region in general?
Yeah, no, there's definitely no correlation between the virus and temperature, unfortunately, for many places. You know, look, no industry has been exempt from the effects and challenges of COVID, and the motion picture industry in particular has been really hard hit. We all know the numbers. It's, you know, it's past 10 billion now in revenue losses. There are a few jurisdictions, however, which for various reasons did manage to continue production, the activity of film and television production during this whole pandemic. There is, I think, 4 jurisdictions around the world, and we were one of them. We actually produced just shy of $100 million of film and TV production since March. And you know, there's so many reasons we could talk about, Tom, but I think, you know, the first one is how quickly the governments reacted to the pandemic, how quickly they put in place the health and safety measures, the testing measures, and also, you know, how well the government communicated the health and safety guidelines to the populations, and then of course how the populations respond and listen to the government directives. And so all that combined led to Abu Dhabi in particular having one of the lowest infection rates per capita of any place in the world. And so therefore the government could, you know, could deem film and TV production a vital sector by the government. And therefore we were exempted, the industry was exempted from movement restrictions, exempted from quarantine obligations, you know, given a whole series of health and safety protocols, particular to our shoots and our productions, but that's the way we got around it.
That's very interesting. And then the government support seems to be critical, as we heard Cassandra talk about, particularly independent production going back, and they just, you know, don't have the wherewithal to withstand the cost and the risk associated with shutdowns and frankly, even testing and other measures that need to be taken. Tell us a little bit about some of the projects that you have going on right now in the region, and what are you seeing in terms of protocols and steps that are being taken for COVID compliance or independently of that?
Yeah, well, obviously I can't actually name the productions that are being produced right now, as you know, but you know, I can say 2 of them are Hollywood blockbuster motion pictures, and 2 are are quite big indies. And I think the reason is really what, you know, Cassandra and Benjamin were saying is, you know, if you're not a studio or a streamer or a big indie, you cannot self-insure, you know, and trying to find a completion bond to cover COVID is practically impossible. And if it is, it's extremely cost prohibitive. And so, you know, and then finally, you know, we had we're actually producing, I can't talk about this one, it's the first ever Arabic language soap opera called Inheritance. They shot 250 episodes during the pandemic, which is unbelievable. And that's because it's produced by NBC, which is the biggest broadcaster in the region, and they insured the whole completion bond and COVID aspect. So that's the way we got around that one. But yeah, I mean, it really has an effect, we're finding, Tom, on how production companies, and especially independents that are, you know, they can't not produce if they want to survive. They have to start being creative about how they're going to get. And so increasingly, they're having to make production decisions based on a whole slew of risk criteria. And one of them, as Benjamin mentioned, for MRC is the increased budget costs. And so how do they mitigate that is by looking at jurisdictions which have a more competitive rebate. Obviously, I'll sing our own praises. We have the most competitive rebate in a 3,000-mile radius around Abu Dhabi at 30%. And so, you know, we are a solution to a lot of these independents that can't afford the 10 to 30% cost overages because of COVID-related issues.
And how is travel in and out of the region coming into the UAE? Are there quarantine periods, and how are those impacting productions?
Yeah, there's a across the board 14-day quarantine period, which has been in place for a long time, which is one of those many measures I was talking about that contributed to us having one of the lowest infection rates per capita in the world. However, because, as I was saying, production is deemed a vital a service and activity to the economy and the industry, we're working with the government to get exemptions for you know, for these productions I was talking about earlier on. Again, there's a whole series of protocols that they have to abide by, starting before they leave, before they get on the plane, when they get on the plane. There's a whole, you know, tracing protocol as well. But yeah, they are exempt. The key really is that they respect the bubble. So everything is contained within bubbles. You know, you have different zones. I think Benjamin was talking about that as well. Obviously, you know, the essential cast is kept in a separate bubble, and so on and so forth.
So that's interesting to know. One of the things, you know, for those who've traveled to the Emirates, one of the things that I think people love about coming there are all the great resorts and the restaurants and the sightseeing. Just give us a lay of the land for outside of just production. What can you or can't you do, and what the big malls that everybody would want to go see, the indoor ski mountain, are those all open? Are those
they're open, but it's, you know, I mean, I imagine it's the same in everybody's jurisdiction on this call. Is it's a different world. They're open, but, you know, people respect the social distancing. People wear the masks. You know, the government was very quick to implement a whole fine, you know, table, and it communicated it very well. And people just, you know, they respected the rule of the law, and it's become a habit. It's like, you know, it's kind of a reflex now. You go out, you wear your mask, you keep your social distancing, Also, what we've noticed, luckily it's winter here, so temperatures are, between 18 and 30 degrees Celsius. I forget the Fahrenheit conversion, but so a lot more outdoor activities going on right now because, as we've all seen the diagrams, the aerosols, are spread so much faster in enclosed areas. And, when I was talking about choice of location criteria, well, that's another one too. Although, a lot of the studios are booked, and because they like these contained control environments, a lot of these productions are now, if they do have a slate in their development, they're choosing to start with the outdoor, location productions. A lot less risk, therefore it has a direct impact on your insurance, your completion bond level.
Interesting. Great. Well, thank you, Hans. Very, very helpful information from the Middle East. So turning to Dileep. Dileep, to many of us Westerners in the entertainment industry, India is a mystery, but we have taken note of the massive production output of the film industry there and the audiences that it captivates, not just in the region, but frankly worldwide. What has happened during the pandemic with the local production scene, and how are things shifting or changing at this time?
Yeah, hi. India, as you all know, is one of the largest film producing country in the world. We make from 1,200 to 1,400 films a year, and there's equally large television and news and all of that, and it's also divided into all different regions with the Bollywood and then Tollywood. So it's a large country making a lot of content. This pandemic has really hit India very badly because right now we are second largest COVID infected country in the world after USA. But thanks to the Prime Minister, we early on put all the measures to try and curb the spread of the disease, and straight away we had 3-4 times shutdowns like what's happened in the UK and stuff. So the country was total lockdown. So of course film industry was totally shut down, and a lot of people who works in the industry who come from, and these are below the line, which are the light guys or sound or whatever, they come from different part of the country. And as Bombay is very, very popular, so everybody the pandemic time to start going back to their respective states, and so which took a lot of people back home, and they didn't want to be in Bombay. So virtually this film industry was totally on a standstill, and that's been happening since March. So it's been really badly affected, though INB Ministry and FFO, with the Film Facilitation Office, has been trying to reopen the industry, but with the spread and Bombay being the center of filmmaking and still at very high risk of COVID infection, they still waiting and watching with allowing some local productions. We are not allowing any international filmmakers right now to come and visit, whether it was for location scout or prepping some films. We had a German production going on, so we had to send the crew back, so that's on hold. My own project, Jinx, which was we were already doing location scout for that, which has been put on hold. We had started the pre-production stuff, so that's put on hold. So I'm having said that, now government has reopened the film industry. They have put some protocol and SOPs in how you conduct your film production. You have a very limited crew. Everybody has to be tested. And mostly nobody's shooting in Bombay right now. Few productions went out of Bombay on location. So they would be taken to one single hotel, and everybody is tested and 14 days quarantine, and then they started the production, because a lot of larger films were halfway through or almost finished, and they couldn't have waited for much longer time. So They got permission just last month. So the film production is getting back on feet, crawling back, I must say, but still it's pretty much, on a whole, the crew which is coming back as they start allowing the travels, people are coming back to Bombay. Still a lot of crews missing, so it is in a pretty bad state. But we have started productions now. We are doing a scout for one of our projects. Normally, our director and DOP and producers go on a scout, but now we have a new way of doing scout. We give a GoPro and a gimbal to a location scout guy, and he goes and virtually takes every shot, and we edit the film, and people, director and producers and production design, everybody watch that in the respective houses. So that kind of work has started. Location work has started. Script work is going on. Everybody's working from home, kind of stuff. So there's a new way of working. Even the smaller or larger project. We are working on another a big studio project which I can't talk about, but we are doing the scout for them. Our guys are traveling with again with the GoPro and stills and everything. Every day we upload the pictures and everything, and the guys sitting in US and UK, they look at the footage, and of course once we finish the scout, we'll have a look. So having said that, FFO and INB Ministry was Information Broadcasting Ministry, which controls the film part of activities, are looking at it. They know that they have to start the industry, but it's slowly kind of taking time, and people are still very cautious about it. People are still scared about it. So it's really impacted a lot.
So is there some discussion of government support programs for the sector that you see to help jumpstart it in terms of testing or insurance or any other areas? Have you seen any of that?
Yeah, I was in Bombay a few days back, and we had a panel discussion with the Maharashtra government, and central government was also involved with that. They had a series of 3-day discussions how they can revive the industry. It's really impacted a lot, like the indie films has really impacted, and also for below the line crews, which were totally surviving on films, and now they've not been working for almost a year. So they're coming out with some kind of incentives for these films, for the local films and for the international, the state-wise and the center-wise. They're also making, of course, insurance and everything mandatory, but they are giving some subsidies in that, and they're looking at how they can support the industry and the below the line crew particularly, so that they don't have to, and the production, of course, is costing more to the production, and they have to take care of all the insurances and testing and all of that. But government is subsidizing the testing part of it, and seeing that how this can be less impacted and can support the industry.
So for a foreign production, thinking about India as a location in the near future, you said that currently there are no foreign productions in India that are active. Is that right?
Yeah, as I said at the beginning of the year, like I'm based between Los Angeles and India. So I was in US, and I came in February for a location scout for the German film, and then we had this other studio film, and then I got stuck. Of course, I'm from India, so I have home, so I'm happy to be spending this time with my family. But we had to push these productions, hold the production. They pushed back. One was German was already we started the production office in India, which has to be, first we thought it's going to be for a month, 2 month, whatever thing, and then we had to shut the office, send everybody back, totally shut down the office, send Bombay crew in respective places where they came from. And so no production, because there's no visas allowed right now. We were thinking for a new scout last month, and if anybody's coming for even for a location scout, he has to come on of course on a film visa, but that he has to mandatory 14 days quarantine. So he has to be in the hotel for 14 days, wherever, on his own expense. And then after that, he's allowed to do any filming activities. But I don't think any major production will happen for another till the New Year's. Though we have started 2 location scouts right now as we speak, and as I said, they're done in a similar way, like two guys going traveling in a car. We're making sure they're not flying because you know, to be careful about the health and safety, COVID. So we're basically right now is the development part is going on, working the script, scouting, planning, budgeting, and we are looking at next year's, if anything is going to start, it's going to be next year.
Are you seeing any signs of life in the broader kind of South Asia region where there are pockets where production is actively going on, particularly international productions?
No, because one of our projects was supposed to shoot in Sri Lanka, and we are not doing anything there. One was in Nepal, and one was in Bombay. So all 3 of them is not happening. One of my friends was a big filmmaker and an actor here. He did take his production out of Europe to shoot a month back because they had some pending work which they were shooting before COVID, and they had to come back because the film was almost done and some patchwork was done. So people are going out of the country to shoot to Europe now before this new lockdown has come in, but no activities right now. So it is some local production happening in Bombay, somebody going to Goa. Nobody shooting in particularly in Bombay, but they can go to states which are less impacted, like Rajasthan, where I am right now, is less impacted, or you go to Goa or some places, but no major production is going on. Everybody's hoping and waiting for this vaccine to come or situation to be, better soon, and hopefully by next year, we're hoping that the production. Everybody's waiting, like everybody's dying to get back on set, and everybody's like really eagerly waiting to start production. Yeah, because there's so many films done here, and everybody's like a little worried about that.
Well, it's very interesting how the pandemic has impacted this industry so differently in different regions. And, we've heard a really, I think, great cross section of the global impact from everyone today. And I unfortunately, I think we are out of time or about to run out of time. And I wish we had a lot more time to speak with all of you and hear more about what you're doing and what's happening in your region. But I think we're going to have to settle for what we got. I want to thank each of you for your time and your insights. It's been tremendously helpful for me and hopefully for our audience. Wishing you all health and wealth and happiness in the remainder of this year, and hopefully great things to come in the new, including many productions getting off the ground. Thank you. And please, for our audience, remember to reach out if you would like a copy of our industry guide to resuming production. We really appreciate your time in joining us and wish you and yours the best. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye.